Welcome to Living in the 21st Century. My name is Errol Ford, your host for today. And in this studio, I have with me Michelle Perry, married with 2 children, has worked for 8 years at the Catholic Charities as a social worker and counselor. Also in the studio with me is Donna Brackman, single mom with 1 daughter, adopted from Romania, while working as a part of a Christian mission team. Presently a nurse for 20 years at Newton Wesley Hospital. Also in the studio joining me is Dr. Karen Colerick, single, worked as a chiropractor at Newton Center Chiropractic for the past 20 years. Ladies, thank you so much for joining with me this evening to Living in the 21st Century. And we understand that you all have similar things in common, not only in terms in the medical profession, but also in terms of being socially active among humanity. My question goes out to you first, Michelle. You are married with 2 children and has worked for 8 years at Catholic Charities as a social worker and counselor. Could you elaborate a little bit and give us a more in-depth insight to what this is all about?
Okay. So what drew me to Catholic Charities is their mission statement. They're one of the largest human service agencies I believe in the United States, maybe the world, not sure about that anymore. But they're really big on community activism and community organization. And while I'm there, I am a social worker and a teacher. I teach life skills class. And our mission is to help students read, write, and speak English effectively and fluently, and also help people move on to get their high school diploma, GED, which it's now called the HiSET program.
Okay. Okay. And Donna Bracken, you have been a nurse in the emergency room at Newton Wesley for over 20 years. This is a milestone in your life. Tell me a little bit about yourself and the problems that you encounter on a day-to-day level, and also explain a little about your spiritual awareness as well as the physical being of humanity.
Okay. I've been a nurse for 40 years, and so 20 of them at Newton Wellesley. I was really fortunate to be a part of a Christian mission team from 1994 to 95, and I was in Romania, and we were 9 of us, and we were actually there specifically to start a church. We were in Bucharest. So while I was there, I certainly got to know the people, some of the culture, and when I came home, I can honestly say that things came full circle when I decided to go back to Romania and adopt a child. I was really lucky to go back and adopt my daughter. She was 3.5 when she came. I adopted her as a single mom, and she is an amazing girl. She's just she has finished her 2nd year of college now. So, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And Dr. Karen, you have been doing some great work. I was one of your patients also. Now I have a good back like I can sit here. And you have been practicing for like 20 years. So could you elaborate a little and really make us aware of what's going on in the world of being a great chiropractor, and also the spiritual awareness that people, especially this young generation that somewhat lost, need to know how beneficial it could be to them?
Well, I think I became really interested in the connection between health and spirituality when personally I went through some things. When I was in my 20s, I fractured my back. And I went through a very challenging physical, emotional, mental time. And at that point, I would say I really did not have much of a faith or a spiritual belief. And when I went through that period, it was a very challenging time. I suffered a little bit with some depression, and it was very challenging to get through. And then in my 40s, I had found a faith, and I was a chiropractor, and I had to have both my knees replaced. And I saw a difference between my 20s getting through the episode and getting through it again in my 40s. And in my 40s, it took on a different meaning. I got through it a lot better, and I started to think about what is this connection between physical and spiritual health. And then I started to look at some of my patients, and I noticed patients that had a spiritual belief seemed to get through things a little bit better. And so I started to think about this connection a little bit, and I found an interesting quote by a psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, and he was in the Nazi concentration camp. And I love this quote because it really says a lot about patience and suffering. And he said, "Man is not destroyed by suffering. Man is destroyed by suffering without meaning." And I started to think about that, and probably all of us have thought about what kind of meaning can we get when we go through hard times, and especially physically.
Well, that's true. That is something that all human beings cope with when they're under serious circumstances, biologically speaking, in life. And this also brings me to a question here with Michelle again. Your husband had somewhat been through a kidney transplant. And I believe as a mother having to deal with a kid and husband going through this kind of rigidity in life, how did you able to cope with that physically and spiritually?
Okay. Well, actually, he didn't go through a kidney transplant.
Okay.
His sister was suffering from a genetic disease called PKD, or polycystic kidney disease.
Okay.
And so she had gone through to a point, because we don't know what we know now medically, and it was misdiagnosed for a lot of years. So at a young age, she needed to have a kidney transplant, or suffer the consequences. So my husband stepped up and said, and he was matched, and he was a donor for her kidney, and that was definitely interesting for us as a family, because we, I thought, wow, this is for his sister, and he loves her a lot, and I love her too, it just took a lot of spiritual prayer and faith to know that he would be okay, and know that this was for a greater good and things like that. And then the surgeries went well for both of them, and then unfortunately a year later he ended up having severe complications as a result of it. They found out what it was, and that was really scary, because we kept going to the hospital, coming back to the emergency room and coming back, and etc. And again, that's another test of your faith. And I know one of the decisions I made was, okay, no matter what happens, I'm going to believe in God. I'm still going to be, my phrase is, I'm still going to be a disciple out of this. I'm still going to act like Jesus. I'm still going to be humble through this. And he made it. He's fine. He got up today at 4:30 and played basketball like he always does, several times a week. So he's fine, and there's no food restrictions. For either of them. Both of them are doing very well, and I really believe God just took care of them both.
Bless God for that.
Yeah, I think, just to jump on that, when you're going through something so difficult, so challenging, with that quote, does your suffering have meaning? For me, starting at the age of 54, I went through a heart stent, and then 3 years later, cancer with surgery, chemo, radiation, and then 3 years later, another stent. And the thing for me was, did my faith have meaning? It really called me to examine and to dig deep and to question, what am I going through here? How am I going to get through all this? And just to make the decision that my faith was going to be strong. It had to be strong. Like my spiritual self had to be so much stronger than my physical self.
Absolutely.
And then you do start to see, when you go through challenges or very difficult times, it does have meaning. And you do start to evaluate, how's my life? What's my life going to be all about now? Not only mine, but my daughters, friends, family, people connected. How, what's life going to be like now? It's going to be different. And, you reevaluate priorities. Maybe the small stuff is just not important anymore.
Right. I know one thing I learned was when my husband went through that, at first I thought, oh my goodness, I have all this work to do. I have all these people depending on me. And, you know, the kids were with us, so that was easy. You know, and one of my friends said, Michelle, come on. I thought, right, right. But you know, that split second, you just think, oh no, I can't take off, you know, whatever it was, 2 weeks or, and, you know, I had the time, but it just felt like, you know, and I thought, right, God, family, you know, this is what, these are my priorities. So that's true.
And I think also I think in the medical profession, I think we're becoming aware how important that spiritual, physical connection is. In USA Today, they did a poll, and 69% of patients said they wanted their doctor to ask them how they were doing spiritually. And then they polled the doctors, and only 10% of doctors said they do it. And I feel like we've grown a lot in our country, even looking at that connection. In 1992, there were only 3 medical schools that even dealt with the spiritual, physical health connection. In 1998, Duke University began a whole center that deals with that connection. And in 2001, there were 125 schools that now offer specific courses in health and spirituality. And so I think as doctors, as a medical profession, we're starting to say there is a connection there. And you do see patients that have a spiritual connection. They have less illnesses, they're less hospital stays, less cirrhosis. A lot of health issues seem to be better, and that may be they're around people that are more encouraging, they're around other people that have that connection. But we're learning a lot in the medical profession, and we're trying to grow in that more and more.
Beautiful. But Dr. Ronald, that's a question. I'm glad that we're on this topic of spirituality. I find that women are more somewhat sensitive and in tune with their spiritual awareness than men. From a psychological analysis, I recognize that men often fight with their brain and their heart. And when you put a little bit of testosterone inside there.
Are you speaking from experience?
I can't speak for other men. I don't know.
Why I ask that question is that not to stray away from the topic, I find that women today, I believe, and sincerely believe, that we need more women to be in leadership positions. And I will tell you why. I think that women has a more holistic approach in dealing with problems than men oftenly. Men, and I'm a man also, you know, there's that testosterone that kick in there, and your brain start to battle. And there's a part of your heart that I believe everyone heart has, and that's compassion. But men don't establish that. And it stems from the highest hierarchy of government right away down to the last man in the street. And with this kind of approach, I think it's only fair to say that we need to have women not only in the healthcare system, but in all aspects of life, taking the realm of leadership more seriously. And more importantly, as I speak on the set, I hope that men are listening to this conversation, because I think it's about time that men start to treat women with equality, knowing that very well those women are the ones who keeping this world alive, believe it or not.
You're a brave man to admit that. That's great.
I want to be a strong advocate of this.
That's awesome.
When men give up out there, women are there who nourish the children. They're better economically speaking and keeping the house together. And this is from a reality standpoint, what I've experienced with my mother going through struggles. So having said all of that, what's your input? What would you say to women out there in terms of leadership and to go for leadership, as well as to take the realm of control at a more serious level?
Well, I think, you know, I've been married 22 years, and my husband and I just celebrated our 22nd wedding anniversary. And one of the things I've learned about men and women is that we're different. You know, the classic book, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And I definitely take you up in that women definitely need to have many more leadership roles. But I also think that it's important for men to have leadership roles as well. But I wonder if we could just learn differently how to lead. And I think traditionally, you know, women have a certain way of being spiritual over here, and men have another way of being spiritual here. So men, from my understanding, I'm not a man, so what I've learned from those 22 years is that men lead differently. And I think what you're talking about as far as leadership in the world is that we all do need more compassion. You know, I do think we need to think more about the poor. You know, I do think that, you know, there need to be more decisions that affect more than just the 10 or 15 or 20% of the, you know, higher economic, you know, scale, and more decisions made for that 60, 80% that that are really living in the world and keeping it busy. So, I mean, I think from a spiritual perspective, I always say this to the men I know, that when God created man, he created a running buddy. He said, let's go build things, let's go do things, let's go create, let's go do this. And when he created the woman together, they did those things together. And I think both, there's that equal ship, that equal relationship that is there, that's very important. So I think both pieces, it's like, do you want to fly an airplane with just one, with the left wing or the right wing? You want to fly an airplane with both wings.
Well, I quite agree with you that that there should be that balance there, but unfortunately, it is not like that in the world today. Men look at women as objects, and it's sad to put it that way. When we look around the United States of America, there's a lot of sex slavery going on.
That's right.
Women being looked down upon as sex objects, sex symbols, is a disgrace to humanity. But worse yet, is a disgrace to men. And I think it's about time that severe penalties and harsh and consequences put in place to stop and prohibit this kind of behavior amongst women.
The societal piece versus the spiritual piece. So I was speaking the spiritual piece.
Yeah, there's such a major difference there.
Definitely.
Sure.
Definitely.
Because I totally can relate to what you're saying. Yes, I am a single parent, but I certainly have tried my best to raise my daughter to be a woman of strength, to have her own convictions, to think things through, to want to be a great helper, to want to serve, to be kind. So I think it's so important that women definitely have deep convictions spiritually. I always say behind every good man is a great woman, and I love to see them working together.
Yes, of course.
And encouraging each other, helping each other, planning together. But I definitely hear what you're saying.
Okay. So going back to the spiritual reality of existing among humanity. From your experience in the OR and your experience also in social work, do you think that this is a lack of awareness among our generation today?
Absolutely, absolutely. I once saw a bumper sticker, and I meant to look up who said it, but it says, we are not human beings on a spiritual journey, but spiritual beings on human beings on a spiritual journey. We're not human, let me see if I can get this right. We're not spiritual beings on a human journey. We're human beings on a spiritual journey. Right, that's the one.
Okay. That's great.
And that to me is really powerful. Okay. And in my work, you know, I work with a lot of poor and working poor folks and people trying to make it, people working 2 and 3 jobs to you know, provide for their families. And it's not that they don't have time to go to the school, you know, it's not that they don't want to go to the school, it's that they don't have time because they're working these 2 jobs. And the thing I noticed, exactly what Dr. Karen quoted, was that the people who have a spiritual strength, they've got that persistence, they've got that hope, they've got that perseverance. They're able to, you know, ride with some of the waves and the issues. Like this winter was classic, classic. The students who had hope and some kind of spiritual connection and support systems, of course, as well. But the ones who were a little bit stronger spiritually, they kind of made it through the snow. The other ones, you know, we called, we sent out flyers, you know, all kinds of things to reach out to bring them back to the program. It was a little bit more challenging, and then when they came in, they were, sort of defeated versus the spiritual people who are like, oh, that was rough out there, but I'm going to make it.
Okay. Well, doctor, what advice would you give to young people today who is lacking spiritual guidance and how they should be more equipped to deal with today's life, briefly?
I would probably tell them to find a spiritual mentor and try to work with someone to give them some guidance. I think a lot of times older people have that spiritual connection because we've gone through a lot. And a lot of young people have not been tried and tested, but they're going to be.
Okay.
And it would be great to have that spiritual mentor to work with them and guide them.
Okay, beautiful.
I think that it's important in families. I think it's important to start at home when your kids are young. Do the best you can to introduce them to relationship with God, to get to know God, to get to know Jesus, to read the Bible, do Bible stories, make it fun and make it something that's very real and very practical in their lives as they're growing up. I know for myself, my daughter and I, we prayed together. If there were challenges, difficult situations, we would pray through it, knowing that God is going to be bigger than this situation. And then when the kids start to see, wow, answered prayers, it certainly does help them to start develop their own search.
Beautiful.
Definitely true.
And Michelle, you can briefly conclude what advice would you have young people today and adults alike take charge of their life from not only a spiritual standpoint but also from a social standpoint? What advice would you have for people today?
Okay, I think exactly what Dr. Karen and Donna have been saying, just seeking out spiritual things. And one of the things I say in class is I say, no matter what age you are, hopefully you're going to at least live maybe, let's say, another day or another 50 or 100 years, right? And I said, so what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your 50, 60, 80 years or your next day? And again, it would be to, seek out God, seek out bigger things.
Right.
Even people who aren't necessarily spiritual but are giving,
Sure.
they do much better. So seek big things.
Right. And doctor, I need your professional advice. I know you've done many years of research in some areas. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on your knowledge and wisdom in terms of both the physical body, which you deal with practically every day, and a little bit about the spiritual, but more in this case on the physical?
Sure. Well, I think, again, I'll go back to some research. There was
Sure.
a poll done, the Gallup poll, and they asked people what were their top concerns when they were dying. And the two top answers were companionship and spiritual concern. And that was above financial and social concern. And so one advice I would give to patients is find friends, find companions. There are a lot of people today that I even see that come in my clinic, and they just don't have any kind of a support structure, network around them to help them, support them, encourage them, be with them. With technology today, with texting, with phones, people just aren't talking anymore. And I think we need that connection back and forth with, how are you doing? How do you feel? How can I help you? Find a friend to go jogging with. Find a friend to go play cricket with. Go find a friend to go do something with, so that we can all encourage each other. And I think that companionship today is really missing.
Yeah, that's right. Don and I earlier had a discussion concerning babies who are now given access to with computers from an early stage. What kind of society we're going to have next 20 years from now, when babies grow up and the only thing they know is technology and the ability to communicate effectively among human beings, or to even interact among human beings, become a thing in the past. What type of world are we destined to?
Right. Well, we're treating patients now, children, with tendonitis in their fingers. Their necks are forward from being on the computer all day. Their heads are crooked over on the phone. And so they come in, and you know, we need them to go out and play with each other. We need them to have some social interaction with each other. So you're right.
Yeah, sure.
Technology is wonderful, but it's hurting our society.
Sure, because you want them to learn how to be a helper, how to be a giver, how to serve. You want them to learn those things. You want your kids to be kind. And they're probably not going to learn that with all the technology. So yeah, they do need to interact with other kids and with adults. You want to help them to interact with all ages.
Well, we're approaching the wrap-up hour. Before we get there, is there anything any one of you would like to say in terms of mentorship? How are we going to start, if it's in our communities, what will we do to stimulate some form of awareness that we can actually make a difference in our communities? There's anything?
I know in our church, one of the things I try to do is I just reach out to the teens and even the younger preteens that are around me. I try to, if there's a teen or preteen that I don't know, I just try to get to know him or her and learn their name and connect them with my husband. So I just think get to know more people in your neighborhood.
Something I have thought, we haven't done this yet, but I've thought it would be really effective when patients come in, if they need something for their feet, we'll send them to a podiatrist. If they need something for their ears, we'll send them to a specialist. And I've often thought about having a sheet where if a patient comes in and says, Dr. Karen, I'm struggling, I need some help in my marriage, having a sheet to say, well, here's some marriage counselors to go to. You know, we give them referrals to the dentist for everything else. How about for the emotional? How about for the social? How about for that, giving them a referral? That might be an idea.
Yeah, that sounds excellent, actually.
Yep, these are great suggestions. I also think getting people involved, say maybe in the local food pantry, a way to just get in there and help.
Beautiful.
Things like that.
Okay. Well, that brings us to our half an hour show. It's just starting to get so enlightened. But you know, I hope that in the near future we can meet again, because we just touch basic things and we haven't went into everything we would have liked to go into. But I'm sure that this was a very educational moment. Many who's watching television today would get something nourishable, that they may be able to take things to a different level in terms of faith, in terms of prayer. I do believe that prayer is a strong element that should be indulged in human lives. So I want to thank each and every one of you this evening. You have made a significant contribution to our community. And I want to thank all of those who are at home for listening to us this evening. To have a wonderful day, and stay tuned once again to Living in the 21st Century. Take care.